Hey, ladies and gentlemen. I thought I'd end up trying something a little bit different this time. I figured rather than just talk about the Hive fleet I've been working on, etc., I'd share with you some musings I've had as of late. The to end up putting this here quickly, I end up playing a lot of tabletop RPGs. I also end up having this tendency to end up playing over camera, mic, whatever way we can. You can have seen the three games I'm primarily interested in playing and will jump to at any opportunity. Pathfinder is a staple that follows the route of Dungeons and Dragons. I personally prefer the Pathfinder system. Just it is needlessly complicated, but it's set in settings that everybody understands. Everybody understands what an elf is. Everybody understands what a dwarf is. Halfling, you just end up saying hobbit, and they know exactly what it is when you're talking Tolkien. You can bring about ideas of vast kingdoms and chivalrous knights and decrepit tombs. You can bring all of that, and you got a great line to start. That's also, I'd like to end up bringing about one of my personal favorite games at this current stage, Vampire the Masquerade. Ironically, I'm actually not a long-term Masquerade player. I actually ended up playing Vampire the Requiem, which was a follow-up in a system that had a whole different bit of complication to it. I love it. I really do. I'm not here to end up down crying it, but there's a certain degree of attachment I have with my recent experience with Vampire the Masquerade. A little bit tougher to start on, though. While you may understand what a vampire is, you may not understand what a Ventrue is, or a Malkavian, or a Brujah, or a Gangrel. You might not understand the term Ivory Tower. There's a lot to learn. And then there's Black Crusade. If you think that trying to follow along with Vampire is tough, try and end up following along with Black Crusade if you are not a Warhammer player. If we took anybody and just tossed these games at them, I'd be tempted to end up throwing them in Pathfinder, but that's a whole nother video. Right now, what I think we should end up discussing, though, is what if you're new to a game? It doesn't matter what RPG system you're new to, everybody started somewhere. And a lot of people have this tendency to start getting wrapped up in, oh well, there's this class and if you mix it with this race, or if you end up taking these dots and this stat, or if you end up deciding to just focus on picking up champion of opposed to a psyker. These are a lot of terms that a new player doesn't understand. But what you can do to alleviate that is simplicity. Use the fact that you are entirely new to the system as a point for your character. What do I mean by this? Well, this actually gets kind of interesting. You see, oftentimes I find people are trying to jump in with these characters who are just really powerful at something, which is, it's great to always have an edge, don't get me wrong. But when they start the game, they're so lost in the game world that they're just hearing terms, and that those terms are just bombarding them. They don't really understand what the hell's going on. Maybe they don't really understand what the gravity to the situation is when you end up telling somebody that our ship is on a direct course towards the Eye of Terror. Maybe you don't understand when you end up saying an illithid or mind flare has concocted a scheme in the Underdark. Maybe you don't understand what the political maneuver was with that Ventrue when he spoke to the prince, and why it is that the Brujah were so upset. There's a lot to take in these games, and a lot of stuff that, as an experienced player, you take for granted. But as a new player, you have no idea, and a lot of this gravity falls very flat. But if you end up taking the idea of the new guy, and I love Vampire the Masquerade for this because it primarily revolves around you playing a neonate, a newer vampire, and just roll with it. Specifically, make it a point of reading the rules, but avoiding what we would say in 40K, the fluff. And instead, learn from other players in character. Learn what it is from NPCs. Use the fact that you're the new blood. I mean, one of my first experiences with Black Crusade was playing a guardsman, of all people, that has fallen to chaos through trickery and realized they couldn't go back to the Emperor, but had no idea what chaos was. I mean, not really. All he knew was the propaganda. I will say this, the other players' characters were all too quick to end up telling me about the glory of chaos. Tell me about the blessings of Nurgle, the power of Khorne, the knowledge of Tzeentch, and the allure of Slaanesh, and why theirs was the righteous path, the path to true greatness, to glory. They were all too quick to end up telling me about the kingdoms that they've uncovered and the underground adventures that they've had, the loss of dear friends, when they ended up going into the depths of that mine shaft, and one of them was descended upon by a pack of ghouls, torn to sunder, and then risen again to hunt them down. How mournfully they had to end up putting their friend, their compatriot, out of their misery, so they would not have to live an undead, cursed existence. Speaking of which, talk to a vampire, and they'll be all too quick to end up helping you out. It's going to cost you, though. See, information use, which was so trivial to everyone else, means that you might have to cough up something a little bit down the road, and you start understanding the game behind the game. You learn to play jihad. These are great experiences to take it on, because you don't know, and you get to learn. Maybe it's a case of one of your other players or an NPC has particular anger towards dwarves. Why is that? And you start hearing their tale and hearing how horrific that the dwarves just strip mine everything. They take from the earth. They are of the earth. That's all they do. Maybe it's their greedy hands if you're doing a more Tolkien-esque story. Maybe it's a tale of how the Brujah were betrayed thousands of years ago by the Ventrue. Maybe it's that story where you really get to know what happened upon Horus's betrayal of the Emperor. Now, if you're a new player, you start hearing this, well, it does two things. One, it fills you in, but it fills you in more naturally. You start learning about things. You start developing your character as they start taking in this new world. And two, and this is probably even more important, it gives other players a chance to really show off what they know, what they're capable of, and give them a chance to show how they relate. Are they the type that'll take advantage of a naive person? Or are they the type that actually wants to legitimately help? Maybe they feel that this person is lost and has not yet found their way. Oh, there's so many possibilities to play with this. Ever feel that you have to end up playing a over-the-top, amazingly 3,000-page written backstory, and that you have to research 20 or 30 different books before you even sit down for your first session. Instead, learn from it and learn it through the world. It brings the world so much more flavor that you're playing in. It brings everything to life. And because you can do that, you now get to experience it firsthand. So rather than cheat yourself and try and learn as much as possible, try and cherry pick what's going on. Take that naivete, take that not knowing, and use it. Sometimes just makes things go a little easier, and it makes the character grow so much more.